other interactive technology and be considered present for purpose of quorum and participating in all proceedings. A resolution enacting the emergency declaration will be considered by the City Council tonight. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be followed by a moment of silence for a former council member, Andy Klemick, who served on City Council 1980 to 1983 and passed away recently. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. And seeing that this meeting is being held remotely, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Fulch.
Present.
Councilmember Fox.
Present.
Councilmember Leifelt.
Present.
Councilmember Lund, who will be tardy, and Councilmember Vaughn.
Here.
Let the roll reflect that all council members excepting Councilmember Lund are present and a quorum has been established. At this point, I'd like to add the resolution of declaration of a local public health emergency. We'll have a vote to add it to the agenda, followed by a vote on the resolution. To add the resolution to the agenda, Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox? Yes. Councilmember Fulch?
Yes.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Leifeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender?
Yes, and the motion prevails. On the resolution itself, if there's council discussion, please do so now. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was just opening up for a conversation. How is it that we're going to declare if we're going to move to having meetings fully again being virtually? It's interesting that we have two council members, on virtual now, and I'm not sure where Councilmember Lund is, but we are in the next week, or two, this Omicron variant wave is supposed to be peaking, and so it will be for the next, month and a half about that will be under this duress. And so just what is our decision-making process going to be for moving meetings to be virtual? There's a lot of things have in the last couple of weeks just been full out canceled, and other communities are starting to move some of these meetings online temporarily, and so we haven't had an opportunity to have a conversation about if and how we're going to go about moving things forward to utilize this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Dan, would you like to speak to that? No?
Although council can certainly discuss going to a fully virtual footing, the resolution, the emergency declaration, tried to stay as consistent with what we had for prior activities. So it really is on set up on an individual basis, that if an individual council member is unwell or needing to quarantine because of exposure, or even just a matter of personal concern about the transmissibility of COVID, the resolution is set on an individual basis. If council wants to discuss something broader, it certainly could this evening or at a future meeting.
Thank you, Dan. Any other council discussion? Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to confirm that this approval is till February 28th, 2022, and I would think it gives you as the mayor the opportunity to determine if we wanted a full remote meeting up till February 28th, 2022.
I think the public needs to know also that this declaration is only about meetings today. That's what we're voting on, is just only the meeting discussion of being remote. That's the only power that we're giving with this resolution.
And just to add to that, it is council and commissions, any type of meeting that's held in the chambers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Council, then I would accept a motion to approve the resolution declaration of a local public health emergency. Bless you.
So moved.
Councilmember Vaughn, Councilmember Fulch. Additional discussion, council? Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox?
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch?
Yes.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn? Mayor Fassbender?
Yes. And that motion prevails. For the approval of the minutes, council members, are there any corrections to the minutes for the workshop or regular meeting on January 3rd? Seeing none, they are approved. Comments from the audience. For public comments, we have options for comments to be emailed prior to the meeting as well as interactive feature during the meeting. For the email comments, they have been forwarded to the city council and the receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that item not on the agenda will not be discussed this evening. For live comments, they may be either through our Zoom link or in person. We ask that attendees either raise their hand in person or use the raised hand feature in the Zoom, and they will be invited to speak one at a time. I also would like to remind people that public comment period is not intended for an extended dialogue. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council tonight? Yes, you may come up to the counter and state your name, please, and your address.
Donald King. I live at 4146 Shannon Drive. And right on the corner there of the development that's going to be developed there. So I was just curious, will I be assessed because the street stops, Thomas stops about 10 feet from the edge of my property going on to where the development would be. So will I be assessed for that 10 feet of curbing and street?
Guess I'd ask for some assistance. Ryan? No? You would, Ryan Stemsky is with our Public Works, and he is stating no.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the council? Please step forward and state your name and address.
My name is Dan King, 17150 Red Wing Boulevard. I'm the forested area on the corner of this development, and I was requesting a fence last time because I'm pretty sure the curious kids are going to find my property pretty quickly. And I was curious about that. And I know that's a question probably for the developer, not for the council. But also, I did not receive a certified letter about this meeting tonight, so could I make sure I get all future mailings on this? Dan King, K-I-N-G.
And one more time, your address, please, Dan?
17150 Red Wing Boulevard. I'm the first driveway to the left outside of the city limits, and it's the forested part of the heavily treed area, which is going to go right up against this development. So I've got concern about, I know kids are curious, but I just don't need the vandalism or the kids running through getting hurt or anything like that. And I don't see it as a major problem, but I'm looking for some fencing, and again, I know that's kind of the development, but I just want to be the council to be aware of my concerns. And when the highway department gets involved, I'm going to ask for a blind driveway sign, things like that. But I just want to make sure it's on the record that, again, I'm asking for some sort of privacy fence to protect my property.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Dan, for your comments.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd say one thing here. Just for a point of clarification, Mayor, do you want to take comments for the public hearing upcoming on the annexation or at this point, or do you want to limit comments to things that aren't scheduled for public hearings?
Let's keep the comments for 316 with the public hearing, and
Okay.
then any others we'll take
So
now.
folks will get an opportunity to speak to the annexation issue when it comes up on the agenda here.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone on Zoom, Dan, for, okay? Okay. Council members, are there any items to be considered? Note that adding an item to the agenda tonight has to be a complete vote. Okay. Council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Liefeld?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Council, do you have any new discussion? Okay. Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Fox.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And the consent agenda prevails. For this item, tonight is the public hearing, as we just stated, for the ordinance amendment annexation, Best Development, Trunk Highway 316 and Michael Avenue. For this item, we will have an introduction by Community Development Director John Hinsman, followed by a public hearing and a proposal to table the hearing for completion as a future meeting. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. Tonight, officially, we have an ordinance for annexation for your consideration, which requires a public hearing. The ordinance involves this property here, which is about 71 acres. Red Wing Boulevard, Highway 316 is located here, and Michael Avenue to the west at this location. The South Pines development is to the north with Shannon and Tuttle Drive, and then we have other areas of Marchand Township to the south here. As I said, this is scheduled for a public hearing tonight, and I'll give you an update on what's transpired with this application since it was first submitted. Back in December, we did order a public hearing and consider first reading of the annexation ordinance. Again, an annexation ordinance is to bring property in from a township into the city of Hastings corporate limits. At that time, it was we had a concept plan and a development agreement privately between the existing property owner, Best Properties, and Summergate Development. Since that time, the development agreement with Summergate has ceased. They're no longer involved in a party to this agreement, and they're no longer an applicant as far as the annexation application goes. In speaking with Best Development, the property owner, they wish to continue annexation, consideration of annexation of the property, and they're in conversations with another property development firm that would ultimately enter into an agreement and propose development. The issue we have right now is we don't have a lot of information. We don't have an agreement yet between Best Property and this new entity, nor do we know exactly what this new entity would develop. So any action on this at this point is premature. We need to be able to get that information in so that we can provide notification to people and we can have good discussion based upon the aspects of the development. So at this time, Mayor, what I'm asking to do is, since we've scheduled the public hearing, that we would follow through, hold the public hearing tonight, but we would not close it. We would table that public hearing until the February 7th meeting, as well as any action related to this. I'm hopeful at that point that we'll have more information from the developer, including a concept plan and time frame for development. With that information, we would provide notification again to all property owners surrounding the development so that people can be more informed. So I can stand for any questions that you may have, or you may open the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, John. At this time, I will open the public hearing. We ask that the attendees either raise their hand in person or use the raised hand feature in Zoom, and they will be invited to speak one at a time. At this time, I will open the public hearing. If you'd wish to speak, yes, you can come up and state your name and address, please.
Chris Reuter, I live at 4134 Shannon Drive. I'm in about the dead center of Shannon Drive, where the field backs up to my house in the backyard. I guess it sounds like things are kind of not as far as long as I maybe thought they were, which is good for us. I can probably speak for most of the homeowners. We probably don't like this as much as you guys do, but some of my concerns are, obviously it's private property, but as the displacement of the wildlife on the property. That's a winter feeding ground for deer. It's nice to see it, but I don't know where they'll go. They'll go across the highway. There'll be a lot of deer accidents I'm concerned with. And then, obviously, that roundabout stuff that we put in, that's going to be a nightmare with that development also. And then, along with the noise, the noise of the road, or of all the construction back there being right in my backyard. So, as this gentleman talked about, fencing and stuff like that would be considered possibly for everybody along that back field. That's all I got.
Thank you, Chris.
Jason Angerman, 4130 Shannon Drive. I guess my main concern is I live directly across the street from the park right there. I've seen kids going to baseball day in and day out through the summer, soccer, almost every time a kid gets hit by a car there. Now we're going to add 150 some odd houses or whatever they're going to build there now. And we just went and put in all these roundabouts, which I don't know if you guys have driven them or not. They're not the most practical things. Now you're going to put the same intersection down the road and recreate the same problem that we just tried to get away from. So instead of going through on 316, I could see the majority of these cars trying to exit through Shannon Drive, through the roundabout, and now we're adding, I don't know, let's say 600 vehicles a day to and from work, a couple cars per house, that are going to be driving past a children's park where kids almost get hit daily. That's one of my main concerns. Another concern, if we go back to fencing, at least 3 or 4 of our neighbors that I know of have gates to the backfield. We've had permission from the farmer who leased it to go back there and utilize the property in the wintertime and stuff. Would them be replaced or fixed? Because, obviously, if there's a neighbor, I don't want a gate to my yard. You know what I mean? That's a concern. Yeah, I guess that's about it. And I guess I don't know what it would do to my property value as well. Kind of, and I know I'm just one person, but as you look at it, I got a park in my front yard and a field in my backyard, and I live in town. So I'm just kind of concerned what it would do to my property value as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Sure.
I'm Katie Wurtzma, and I live at 581 Tuttle Drive. Me and my husband just moved there in October. So we were a little disappointed within the first month of kind of settling and adjusting, getting our information about what was going to happen in the land behind us. We have some of those similar concerns, and we've only been there for a little bit. I understand the need to expand and that you want more families to come to Hastings. We've lived in Hastings for about 8 years now. But we are really looking, when we are looking for our next piece of property, we're looking at land outside of Hastings. But we also wanted, a very nice, comfortable home. We have 4 children, younger children. And so we wanted something that was either kind of right by the countryside like we have right now, or out in the countryside. And so we settled on this in Tuttle. And so just to try to give you kind of our background, why we picked was for that land in the back. And we've seen up to 20 deer at one time in that backfield. So clearly the deer use it. They're there almost every night. Our kids just run up to the windows and start looking out there. So the wildlife is very evident. We've seen 4 or 5 pheasants together. Sometimes they're in kind of clumps too. I have multiple pictures and videos too, just because we've really enjoyed that. But also just, I can see with the traffic, people would be cutting in all the time, even with the construction the way that it was. I had to go around because I work part-time at Treasure Island down in Welch. And so, I had to take a lot of the detours, and some of the people that were trying to cut through different ways was very dangerous. So I could see where, as this is getting developed, if people are trying to cut through that nice little neighborhood that we live in, it could get pretty dangerous for my kids. Whereas right now, it's nice and kind of quiet, and we're really excited that we're kind of on the end of it. And then one thing that I did want to ask too is, since we don't have the developer person, this might not be the time, but if we do continue to go through with this, is it possible for us as property owners to purchase the land that's right behind us and not build on it? If that was a possibility or not. Or if that can be an option where we could try to at least purchase that, extend our own home, but then also be able to still enjoy a little bit more of that nature. That's half the reason why we bought this property. So,
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to? Sure.
Good evening. Steve Engstrom, 17162 Red Wing Boulevard, Hastings. Concern is we need to focus on our traffic study for both Highway 316 and for the neighboring areas. The current roundabouts did not address this situation. There are going to be 2 points of concern. Wherever the access would be toward the new development, and adding that many more vehicles back into 316, where 316 and 61 are, right by the Civic Arena, would back up in town also. Would like to see a plan addressed for parks in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone other in the audience that would like to speak? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. At this time, I will close the public hearing and open it up for Councilmember Vaughn.
I think we have to leave that public hearing open till next
Oh, I'm sorry.
one. And I just wanted to clarify, Your Honor, John, with that, will the public hearing, can people email in from now till the next one, their input?
They can, yeah. They can email in any comments, give me a call. I've had the most up-to-date information at the city when it comes in here. But, yeah, email me at my email address. We have City Council comments section on the website as well, where comments can be emailed in.
So it's the longest public hearing we've ever had, more or less.
Well, it's a longer public hearing, absolutely. But hopefully we'll have more information to share. When I get the information, I'll certainly share it with council and with the public as well here, so we know what we're looking at.
And then I just have a follow-up, since you're there, John. Originally, we've seen some concept drawings from the developer. Today, that's null and void. So we're reacting to land today. We don't know, is that drawings not used anymore? Are they gone? So the road connection, or where we move traffic, is still not known. We're having a public hearing on land, more or less.
Fair question, council member. The concept plan that was mailed to folks in the public hearing and shown previously to the council, I don't know where that stands at this point. That was done by the previous developer. Would the new developer use that plan or a portion of that plan? It's yet to be seen. But one thing I can clarify is that what we're doing, the application we're looking at right now is the annexation, which is the bringing the property into the city. That would be the action. Beyond that, we would need to look at the specific plans for development, the preliminary plat, final plat. That's where we specifically take a look at roadways, traffic, impacts, stormwater, a whole variety of different items. That would be a separate application from the annexation. Another public hearing would take place, reviewed by the Planning Commission, and ultimately action by the council on that.
Okay, thank you. Good clarification.
Thank you, John. Any other? Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. See, John, since the majority of residents brought up the issue of the roads, and just so that you all know that our preliminary conversations were that we were all very concerned as well with 316 access there and how that's going to work. And I was just wondering how, in those conversations, staff had reported that they would work closely with MnDOT and determining how it is the intersections would work there. But just for timing, not knowing how long that this is going to take, John, how long will it take for those discussions with MnDOT staff go? I mean, you kind of know approximately where it is a new road outlet would come, out onto 316. And so, so I have to imagine it would just be, moving an access point just, 100 feet or something like that. It wouldn't be like a huge, it's not that big of an area. And so just to understand how long would it take for those conversations with MnDOT to happen? Because it seems to me that we shouldn't be approving the development, necessarily the layout, without really having a fuller conversation about how the access point comes in at the same time. I would hate to see for the development to be approved and then the highway access to come much later. It seems to me that they should be coming together and there should be agreement at one time. So thanks. If you could let us know, that'd be great.
Sure, Councilmember. Yeah, and with, MnDOT has looked at the previous concept plan and made comment on it. So they are knowledgeable of what's coming up here, understand the impacts that were proposed with that development. When we get the new concept plan in, we'll share that with MnDOT, ensure that the comments that we previously received still hold, or if they're modified in some way. And generally speaking, I would suspect that the main access to this development is going to occur at Michael Avenue and 316. And so that's going to be the busiest intersection likely, and MnDOT's preliminary comments were that intersection improvements were needed there, turn lanes and so forth, to accommodate that. I suspect that that'll likely follow through with this development, but they haven't seen the revised concept either, or have I at this point.
Okay, Councilmember Brox.
Thank you, Mayor. John, my question is about the size of the next proposal, and I know you don't know that right now, but is it possible that the development proposed could be smaller, but would not be larger than what we have seen so far?
Yeah, Councilmember, it's hard to say what the development would be. Last plan was for about 160 single-family home lots. I'm not sure if that would follow through with the new developer or not. If it would be that many, few or more, how it would be laid out, I'd have to see what comes up on that.
And I guess as a follow-up to that, my question is more about size of the piece of property that we're annexing. We can annex this much property, but the development that's proposed can't be larger than what we're annexing right now, correct?
Understood, Councilmember. Yes, the annexation application right now is 2 properties. We cannot amend that application to include more. So it's limited to these properties. It's a matter of how it's developed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion, council? Okay. Then, council, I would accept a motion to table the public hearing. Councilmember Fulch?
Moved, Your Honor, to table the discussion.
Thank you. And Councilmember Liefeld. At that time, it's a non-debatable motion. So council, do you have any new discussion? If not, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll. Or, Flatten, sorry. I knew I was going to do that. Clerk Murtaugh.
Councilmember Brox.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Fox.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund. Yes. Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Thank you for your comments tonight. Tonight, we have with us Public Works and a resolution to approve the amendment to Resolution Number 8-09-08, Prevailing Wage on City Projects. For this item, we have with us Ryan Stemski. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. I'll just jump right off that title and jump into the amendments to the resolution on the prevailing wage policy on city projects. So really what we're here to discuss tonight is two amendments to the resolution on file since 2008. One is the increase in the limit to which it applies from $100,000 for a project up to $175,000 for a project. And then the second is to allow the city council an exception to the policy for those unique projects that may arise from time to time. So a little background on both of these amendments. One, the prevailing wage policy, like I stated, it was instituted in 2008. Since then, due to inflationary reasons, it's time for an increase in that minimum dollar amount. Also, the recommendation from $100,000 to $175,000, that $175,000 mark does align with the state's competitive bidding laws. So the policy would align with that in those projects that would be required to be publicly bid. So that's where that $175,000 threshold comes from. Secondly, just currently the policy doesn't allow any exceptions to it. It's all city projects apply. So for some flexibility in that policy, the city council would have the discretion for those unique and specialized projects to give exception from time to time. So those are kind of the two pieces. There were committee discussions on on these elements. One on the December 21st Finance Committee meeting. The recommendation was provided to increase that dollar amount from $100,000 to $175,000. And then furthermore, the Operations Committee on January 4th of this year, we talked about both the increase to $175,000, got that recommendation, and then also allowing that exception to the policy for those unique projects. Both those elements of the resolution were recommended out of the Operations Committee. So a little bit on the financial impact. The prevailing wages are typically required for all federal and state projects. So when we use federal and state funds on our projects, the prevailing wages do apply. So many of our projects do already incorporate prevailing wages. Most municipalities do not have a prevailing wage policy unless those funds do apply. So just a little clarity on municipal projects and kind of where we sit. So in your packets, we do have attached the original resolution from 2008 and then those amendments that would apply to the resolution that are up for discussion tonight. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ryan. Council, any discussion? Any questions for Ryan? Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just like to say that I'm supportive of increasing the dollar threshold for the prevailing wage policy from $100,000 to $175,000 because it does make sense to have that in alignment with the formal bid law. I think other municipalities that do have it, generally it's just the really large cities like Minneapolis, St. Paul, probably Ramsey County, Hennepin County, things of that nature. And so I think that it's awesome that we do have a prevailing wage policy. To begin with, I'd like to state that. But from a practicality standpoint, I think that it does make sense to make this move. So thanks for bringing that forward, Ryan.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Brox, I do see your hand is still raised. Is that?
Yes, that's current.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Ryan. My question is about exceptions. What's an example of a situation where we need an exception? When does this come up?
That'd be a good transition into my next item, but it does come up from time to time. I'd say, just to summarize it, it's when we have specialized labor, specialized equipment, where the prevailing wages doesn't really come into play. So a lot of times, typically we see this on our neighborhood project, right? Large project, a lot of different labor involved, variety. it's a good application, like Councilmember Fulch said, where whether we're using those dollars or not, we're requiring prevailing wages. But on some projects, we just have, one labor category or very specialized labor where it doesn't really, those companies aren't, unionized, they're not going to change, they're just going to increase their rates and to comply with our minimum. So it's not really it's not changing the bid environment, and it's not changing who's working on the job. Does that help, Councilmember?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry for jumping ahead. That was just a burning question in my mind.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Fox.
I was actually going to say that as well. Thank you, Ryan. In our committee meeting, we talked about this being a specialized project and why this moving the prevailing wage makes sense specifically, like Councilmember Fulch said, for this project, for this style of project. And since it is consistent with the Minnesota competitive bidding, I'm in favor of it, and we were as a committee as well. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Vaughn.
It looks like we kind of lumped these two together, so I'm going to ask a question about the item coming, because it relates to this unique. Who determines unique or specialized? I would hate to, I want to set up a framework so staff has the opportunity. Do they use a consultant that says that's unique, or what's going to make it easier so staff's not caught saying, well, I checked around and it's unique, there's nobody else doing it. I want to make sure it's very clear for staff so we're not guessing and having wavering from one to the other. Because examples, there's projects, I know that like a water park that I run that is unique, you can't find it. I searched and searched, but part of the policy maybe should include, staff just needs to keep those records on hand in case someone asks us, tell me what's unique about it. I just want to help staff get protected, but also give you some solutions. I noticed that the next item, you had a consultant that said, this is unique. I think that's important that we have that included with our new policy, that someone helps us determine what unique is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other discussion? Okay. And council, I would accept a motion to approve a resolution amending resolution 8-09-08 of the City of Hastings establishing a prevailing wage policy. Councilmember Lund and Councilmember Liefeld. Council, any other new discussion? Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox?
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch?
Yes.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lund?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender?
Yes, and that motion prevails. Ryan, imagine that. So a resolution tonight to approve the 4th Street Water Tower reconditioning plans with exception to prevailing wage policy and authorize advertisement for bids.
Thank you, Mayor.
Continue, Ryan.
Yeah, so this is a good transition to what we just talked about. We do have a specific, unique project that we are working with a consultant on. And so the formalization of this, to your point, Councilmember Vaughn, is we do have included in your packet a resolution that helps clarify those rationale, and we can record a document. Why did we choose this project to be special and unique? And so that did help in this instance, expert in the tank industry and a resolution to document it. So very important, and we're putting that into play here. So a little background on this project. This is our 4th Street Water Tower. This is a reconditioning project. So this includes structural repairs and replacement of the interior wet, interior dry, and exterior coatings of that tower. So pretty significant. That's a 750,000 gallon tank. So it's a large tower, very specialized work. Not a lot of companies do that, but we'll get into that here. The plans and specs were prepared by KLM, and as I alluded to, they're a very experienced, specialized themselves, engineering firm in the tank industry. So very well respected, and they're kind of the go-to. So They not only prepared our plans and specs, but they also will provide full-time welding inspections and overall inspections of the water tower work of any contractor we, bring on board. So that's important to note. In discussions and preparations of the specifications with KLM, they did note that bidding this work really wouldn't change regardless of the wage implications. So they noted it first to us in our discussions. They said that there's really only 4 or 5 contractors that can handle a tower of this size across the nation. So they historically have good relationships with these folks, encourage them to bid on this size tower. And that's because the work is very specialized itself for the labor involved. And then also the equipment's very expensive as well. So they don't see a lot of new companies jumping into this line of work. So they kind of have those relationships and experiences to share. And so with that, that's where we kind of evolved with the specialized and unique project itself. And that's where it came from. KLM further explained to us that they work with all municipalities in our state, or many of them, I should say. And they don't see the prevailing wage application on these reconditioning projects. They just flat out don't see it. It's kind of a unique thing. So they started to talk about and ask their contractors, what would this impact be to the city of Hastings? And they thought up to about a $200,000 increase to the project. So we started talking about the engineer's construction estimate, and it would increase from the $1.4 million to $1.6 million. So that's when it started to catch staff's attention of, we need to talk about this, we need to discuss this and bring this forward to council as we just did. We also brought this specific conversation to our operations committee at the January 4th meeting. And due to the unique nature of the project, the specialized labor involved, the limit of approximately 5 qualified contractors, and those potential cost implications, the operations committee did recommend that we provide exception to the policy if the policy were amended to allow that action, obviously. So that was the discussion at that meeting. In your packets, you'll find the resolution approving the project with that exception to the prevailing wage policy and authorizing us to go to add for bids. This is kind of the last action on it. We're trying to get out to bids to position ourselves to get good bids for the summer work. So we'd actually go out to bids tomorrow, start that 3-week competitive bidding project, and bring this contract back, hopefully with good bid results, to you guys' second meeting in February. So that's kind of where we're at tonight and what the request is in front of you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ryan. Ryan, I have a question. How long does a project like this take?
We anticipate this project starting in probably the end of July and wrapping up mid to end of October. So it takes a while. Before that, we do have to remove all our wireless antenna that when you look up on the tower and see. So that project will probably start in the spring, not by this contractor, but all those wireless carriers will have to take down their antenna and equipment. So you're going to see action over the whole summer, I guess I should say.
And then do you find another place for them to?
Yep, we had to give a 6-month notice
Okay.
To these folks, and so they're starting to work on their plans, collaborate amongst each other. Sometimes they put a temporary antenna up and they share that, or pole up and they share that for their services. So yet to be determined, but that's exactly what they do.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you. Ryan, you just brought up a good point, that it's going to be a lot of activity starting in July, and I'm assuming it'll go into fall.
Yep.
before the- Who owns the property that the water tower sits on? Is that the school district or is that the city?
Good
And
question.
have we talked to the school about using their property for staging?
It is an interesting project from that standpoint. We own the property around the water tower. We actually own part of right field and a couple tennis courts, if you dig into it. If you look on a map, if I had an aerial, I'd pull up. So we actually own that entire water tower site, but there is a gap from 4th Street to that site. So we're partners with the school. They've been brought on board since the beginning. Unfortunately, they are resurfacing that parking lot. So that's off limits in our contract or in our specifications. We'll actually be creating our own access off 4th Street through the green space and staging equipment out there rather than in the parking lot like we'd like to. But we don't want to ruin the school's improvement, nor do we want to provide that conflict. So yes, we've been in a lot of conversations with them.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you touched on this a little bit, Ryan, and I just want to kind of emphasize and highlight it, that this is, I mean, it's a fairly sizable project cost-wise. And it's really, it may seem very aesthetic or a surface kind of type of project, but can you go in a little bit more detail about, I mean, you don't have to go super deep, but just, you know, this isn't just making the water tower pretty or updating a logo or something like that. You know, we're not doing it because we're bored. So you just give a little bit of context so that people understand why this carries such a hefty price tag.
Yes, Councilmember Lund, first and foremost, it's dangerous and unique and specialized work, first and foremost. So keep that in mind. It's not like you're painting the side of a building or something like that. It's dangerous work. But as far as our tower itself, with all the wet contact on the inside, we get a lot of failures, rusting, we get break in structural bonds. We have a 50 to 75 page report with photos identifying every failed structural element. Now, they're not completely busted open and water's not spraying out of our tower, but significant deterioration is observed in those joints. And so those all need to be disassembled and re-welded together with new parts and components, and every square inch of that interior needs to be strategically recoated, and we have a lot of things to move out of the way to make those structural and coating repairs. And then you move to the outside, same thing. If you look up on our tower, you'll see the visual rust marks up the tank side, and it's just, those are just the things you can see with your own eyes. Same things there, just a lot of blasting and removal and preparation and coating and layering. So I'd say those structural repairs are the biggest things that people don't realize, and then the following up with blasting and cleaning and coating on top of all that. Hopefully, does that help? Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Any additional discussion? Okay, council, then I would accept a motion to approve a resolution approving plans and specifications with exception for the prevailing wage policy on city projects, authorizing the advertisement for bids for the 4th Street Water Tower Reconditioning Project. Councilmember Liefeld? Councilmember Vaughn. Sorry, Councilmember Vaughn. Any new discussion, council? Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Fox.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes, and that motion prevails. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Tonight, under administration, we have a resolution special assessment deferral policy for this item. We will have an introduction by City Administrator Dan Waticha.
Thank you, Mayor. This discussion actually began last spring, but was brought through to the Finance Committee just this past December, and they recommended it. Minnesota statute, state law allows the city to defer special assessments on homesteaded property under certain circumstances. If it's occupied by a senior citizen, somebody who's disabled, or somebody in military service, and in each case, a matter of the special assessment would be some sort of financial hardship that they'd be unable to make those payments. But although state law allows that, it requires the city to have a written policy, which we've not had in the past. And I don't know the provenance, if there's been discussions in the past or not, but Finance Committee this past year said it's something we should consider, and they recommended this new policy just last month in December. So it would affect new assessments going forward, whether it's tree removal for emerald ash borer, or one of our more extensive neighborhood projects, but defines eligibility as 65 years or older, retired by virtue of permanent or total disability, or serving in the Guard or military reserves and called into active duty per some statutory definitions. And the fact that they have a financial hardship to this, which in the policy is defined as that 1 year installment of the assessment being greater than 1% of the applicant's adjusted gross income. So it's really a fairly low bar, but putting forward a benefit to some people that would have some financial difficulties with these assessments. Couple points. Interest still accrues. Obviously, they can pay it at some point in the future if they feel that their circumstances have changed. But otherwise, the deferral ends and the payments are due, including interest, when the property owner dies, when the property is sold or transferred or subdivided, if the property loses its homestead status, or in some fashion if there's a determination that there's no longer a hardship in that individual's case. To a certain extent, we don't know what the financial impact would be to the city. If these are deferred, the city is carrying those costs. But some real rough numbers, looking at our neighborhood project last year, 15th Street, or the far end of 15th Street. There was about $750,000 of that project was assessed. If it's assessed over 10 years, principal only, roughly $75,000 per year. Granted, we don't do it on a straight line amortization, but it helps for illustration here. $75,000 plus interest if all the assessments were deferred. So if it's some portion of that, let's say 1 in 10 were eligible under this and took advantage of it, we're talking $7,500 plus interest that the city would be carrying. So there is a financial impact. It certainly adds up over time, but it's something that on any individual year expected to be manageable for the city to carry those costs. After we have some practice with it for a year or two, we'd have a better idea at what we might predict for the number of residents that would be eligible, and assume that from one year to the next it's similar and could better plan it on future projects. But it certainly seems manageable. But in a nutshell, that's the proposed policy. I can certainly take any questions and appreciate presenting this.
Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dan, so just under the termination piece of it, are there any circumstances where the special assessment would be put onto like the new owner of the property, like where the city would place a lien against something? In the case of an elderly individual, the property gets sold, it's not worth what they owe, whatever. Is there any circumstances where something like this could go on to the individual buying the home?
Not really. Where it may carry forward, it would be if there was a married couple and maybe the house was technically in one's name, and that individual passed and the surviving spouse inherits it. If that surviving spouse still meets the eligibility requirements, it would pass on. But if it's sold and you're bringing in a new owner, at that point, the assessment would come due.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld. Any additional, Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. Dan, just in follow-up to what you were just saying and perhaps to Attorney Land, is that something that we would need to clarify within the current language so that, and, you know, as a for instance, you can have an elderly couple and perhaps the home is in just the husband's name, and if he passes and it goes to his wife, I mean, does there need to be language in there about the home passing to a spouse or even a child? So that the assessment doesn't suddenly get re-triggered at that point, if there's not a financial transaction that occurs? Just looking for clarification.
Your Honor, members of the council, if I could respond to that. What happens upon death is there still needs to be a deed and a conveyance, and the assessor's office will catch the assessment at that point. So regardless of whether or not we have anything in our policy, the assessor's office knows this deferred assessment is out there because we have to file it with them. And so they keep it annually. We remind them that we have it on record or that they have it on record. And so upon a conveyance, it will be triggered. So even if it's not a financial sale, they will not transfer a deed without this being accounted for and resolved.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. All right, so there's not, what I just heard you say is that there would be nothing that we could do about it. Okay, all right. And so, and then my second comment is just to thank staff for doing the legwork on this. This conversation arose as we were looking at the Emerald Ash Borer situation and having to have property assessments for the removal of the trees and then to help folks who may have several of the trees on there, just another tool in the toolbox, you know, to help. And I think it'll also, you know, assist, you know, further with property tax assessments for the major, you know, street reconstruction projects in case folks need to use that. You know, I think everyone is really startled with how inflation is going up, and so budgets are getting tighter for a lot of households. And so if this is one more thing that we can offer the disabled, our, you know, folks in military services, their an active status and, you know, the disabled and such, I think that it's just a wonderful asset, and I hope that we're able to continue this into the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Fox, did you have a comment?
It was just a point of clarification regarding Councilmember Filch's previous question.
Okay.
In the termination section, it says that provided that the surviving spouse is otherwise not eligible, so they could be eligible for the deferment as well. Sorry, a little delayed now.
It's okay. Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Any other discussion? Okay, council, then I would accept a motion to approve a resolution authorizing deferred of special assessments for senior citizens, disabled, or military persons.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Vaughn. Any new discussion, council? Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes, and that motion prevails. Tonight, we will hear from City Administrator Dan Maticha on the interim wage adjustments. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. And emphasize that these are interim. Take a step back. For several months, we have been talking about doing a compensation and classification study, and anticipate that very soon we will have a consultant under contract for that, or a recommendation to have a contract there, probably our next council meeting. And that is the primary goal, is looking at all of our positions throughout the city. I think there's somewhere around 80 different positions that we have. That comp and class is the number one goal. But as we looked at the 80-some positions, many of them are appear to be underpaid, and that's the reason that we're doing the comp and class studies. They appear to be under the market rates. We want to get them up where the market is so that we're competitive. But there's a handful, a few positions that are further off than the rest and more of an outlier type position. So they're at roughly 8 to 15% off of the market rate for these 5 positions. And really, that's what we're trying to address here, is bringing those 5 outliers in line with the other positions, and then having everybody be patient, wait out the process for the comp and class study, anticipate it being done early summer. Target date is June 30th. Trying to, in the process, minimize the amount of changes we're making in our pay structure. So although we see a few positions that do appear to be extra significantly off and wanting to bring them more in line with the others, trying to keep it to a few positions rather than a lot. Trying to keep the adjustments to an increment, bring it from, say, 10% to 7% rather than the full 10%. Trying to minimize the differences that the comp and class study would be looking into, as well as the comp and class study's not done, so our preliminary numbers might be off, and a bit hedging our bets on that. So anyways, that's what's proposed, is trying to bring these 5 positions in line with the rest, bringing it so that no position appears, based off preliminary data, appears to be more than 7% off the market rate. And then anticipate that this summer, with completion of the comp and class study, all positions, these 5 and the other 75 positions, would likely have some sort of adjustments the rest of the way. This was talked about discussed at length at the administration committee in December and earlier this month in January, which supports and helped come up with this proposal. The other piece, just on a financial impact, on these 5 positions for 6 months, retroactive to the first of the year through June 30th, would be a little over $8,000 plus FICA and para expenses, about another 15% on top of that. But with that, I can take any questions. I know it's a difficult, many pieces to the topic, but I can certainly take questions on it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Any discussion, council? Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm still scratching my head on this one. We approved hiring a consultant to do the study, but then in staff, we did some preliminary checks, and we found some positions, and we want to move them up somewhat, and then hope the study confirms that and probably moves them up again. I don't know why we just don't wait till the study's done. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to get involved in the day-to-day operations, but if I was in the staff mode and say, well, how did you come up with those 5? And we got reasonings why, but did we go through every 80 positions and get some preliminary data? If so, why are we hiring a consultant? We're kind of doing the work that I thought we were hiring a consultant to do, to determine, are we paying the right salaries for our employees? That's why I'm hung up. I don't know why we would make an adjustment, because the study's going to prove that they should be moved up versus us using our own solution. I just think we're missing, I don't understand why we're just doing a few. If we're going to do it, and if it is correct, if the study says they should go up, why don't we just put a retroactive in or something that says go back and get whatever they worked today? But I'm not happy with just these positions. I think the comp and class study should be done, and that's the numbers we should be using, not us doing preliminary numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I concur with Councilmember Vaughn, and we have already been making some adjustments to a few positions that have come up in the last several months as hiring opportunities have arisen. And so I think that it does make sense just to be consistent, for all staff as they're coming on board. And I agree if something retroactive seems like it's a fair thing to do. But, I think that in general, going through this process is really stressful for all staff. And I have to imagine that they want to be treated in a fair and consistent way. And so I think that we should stay the course as well and be transparent and very communicative with the staff and helping them understand, the process and what impacts are. And I haven't been involved in the committee conversations about this, but I know that there's a lot of moving parts because I've gone through it myself, and it's painful for staff. And so I don't think that we should be confusing them and just making it more complicated. I think that we should be straightforward, and I think it'll also help with the unions as they're moving forward also, with negotiating their contracts and how it is everybody goes into an acceptance mode here. And so I would rather just hold off and I know that maybe doesn't seem fair for the 5 staff that you're talking about right now, but I just think collectively as a whole that it's a fairer thing to do for all the staff in the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Fox.
So just from our committee discussion, we had pretty thorough and long-winded conversation about what this all entails, and in both of our committee meetings, we went back to what the contractors that we're talking to would recommend as well, and that's where some of this comes from. And Dan, I'll let you speak to anything that I maybe am less informed than you on here. But this just brings some of the outliers into the fold, so that we're not expanding these wages so dramatically once we do get into the common class evaluation finalization. And we think it's a valuable tool to move forward with so that the common class study can start without these major outliers. So just so there's a little bit of clarification there.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Brox, did you want to comment?
My question was to hear the admin committee's discussion, which Councilmember Fox just covered, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Brox. Any additional discussion, council? Okay. Council, I would accept a motion to approve the adjustments to wage scales as proposed. Councilmember Fox and Councilmember Liefeld. Additional new discussion, council? Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox?
No.
Councilmember Fulch?
No.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld?
No.
Councilmember Lund?
No.
Councilmember Vaughn?
No.
Mayor Fassbender?
Yes. That motion does not prevail. Thank you, Dan.
Anna, clarification.
Oh, Councilmember Liefeld?
Clarification, so with us voting that piece down, this all just continues in the common class study? Correct. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Council, I would, any announcements from council? Okay, I have a few. Recycle your old lights with the Hastings Holiday Lights Drop-Off Collection. Residents can drop off their unwanted lights, strands at the Joint Maintenance Facility 920 10th Street West during the holiday season through February 1st. We will have a virtual kickoff meeting about the new Community Investment Fund on Monday, January 24th, for an overview of the program and to answer questions from local partner organizations. Snowshoe guided hike on Sunday, January 30th at J.C. Park. Registration is required. Snowshoes, poles, and instruction will be provided. The event is free and offered in partnership with Dakota County Parks. The State of the City will be presented virtually again this year on Wednesday, February 2nd. I'd like to wish Dan Waticha, our city administrator, a birthday at the end of the month, January 31st. And meetings moving forward are Wednesday, January 19th. The Public Arts Task Force is at 7 p.m. Thursday, January 20th, Public Safety Advisory Commission meeting via Zoom at 6:30. And Monday, February 7th, 5:30, City Council Workshop for Police Department Overview, and 7 p.m. City Council regular meeting. Council, I would look for a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Liefeld and Councilmember Vaughn. Clerk Murchow, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Fox.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes, and we are adjourned. Thank you.